All right, welcome to this note review. I'm going to do a little different. I'm not going to put my face up there in the screen unless you really want it. I don't know anybody really wants to see my face. Anyways, here's a little review on what you guys need to review for your test that's coming up here on Monday. So if we're looking at our set of notes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type and I'm going to talk as I fill this thing out. So that way you guys will have it at the ready for what you guys need. So if we're looking at section 2.1, which is the very first section on the row, what I would make sure to look at is how does the geography of Rome help them? So if I were talking about this, I would make sure that I would talk about things like rivers, like the sea that is right beside them, elevated land, anything that helped them out in terms of their geography to keep them away from pirates, to connect them to the rest of Rome. That's what I would talk about there. Second thing, under this section, is I would talk about how does Rome begin. So you've got the story of Romulus and Remus. Again, that was just a fictional tale of two brothers supposedly raised by wolves. That's obviously where we get the name Rome from. But also you could talk about the Greeks and the Etruscans. Etruscans, don't have my vocabulary in front of me, who helped them do things. And now that actually leads into the third section, which is who helped early Rome. In that part, you've got two groups. You've got the Etruscans and you've got the Greeks. Again, same answer as you kind of have up above. And if you look at your note sets, it talks about how the Greeks helped them, the Romans, to learn alphabet and architecture and farming. And the Etruscans taught them metalworking, mining, and how to enslave others and the reliance on the military. So those are your main things from just section 2.1, is to be able to know what each of those means. Now we get a little more specific on things. On 2.2, I would like you to be able to tell me on 2.2 the purpose of the Roman army. Be able to tell me that they were there to conquer and defend. And you can see how quickly I write here. The idea was conquer and defense. They're going out and taking land, but they're also defending what's theirs. If there is no Roman army, there is no Rome. Okay, so you got to have a strong army, which they did do, and it served a lot of purposes. The second thing is why join the Roman Confederation. Remember when the Roman Confederation, when people were conquered, when people were conquered by Rome, they had options. You either join or die, but also they had the opportunity to become citizens, vote, not die, not be slaves. So in the end, it really helps them out to join Rome, to be in the Confederation, because they could actually become allies as well. Now, allies are more trusted friends, and so it really behooves them to not want to die or not be slaves, and to join the Roman army. Now, how to join Rome as a confederation? How does this help Rome? Well, it keeps them from having enemies who hate them forever, and it also helps them to grow because they're adding more and more people as they go. Section 2.3 was about the Roman government. What I want you to be able to tell me is about the people. Sorry, I put this in the wrong way. I'm trying to make this the right way. You have two groups of people at that time period in Rome: the patricians and the plebeians. There we go, the plebeians. Patricians were your upper class. The plebeians were your lower class. Patricians usually were the ones who were in power and were able to vote. Plebeians, they had lesser power. So make sure to know the difference between those two groups. And then the second thing is to be able to know your tripartite government. You had three parts to the tripartite government. Part one, you had lawmakers. Your lawmakers, that was your Senate, and we call it Senate today. It's the branch that we refer to as the legislative branch. Legislative branch. So they were the ones that were making the laws. The second one, they were your leaders. This was your consul. Consuls were chosen typically for a year. This would be like our president today. And it is our executive branch. They had the power under here, power to veto. Veto means what? Veto means I forbid. So that means if there was any kind of law that they didn't like, then they could easily change that, well, pretty simply. So they had power to forbid. They served for very little time period. Your legislative branch for these guys, Senate, we put up here, that was 300 strong. There are 300 total people, not 300 the movie. There just happened to be 300 of those leaders. And then three, that does perfectly there. Third are your praetors, or which would be your judges. Judges, they're called the praetors. It is your judicial system. What we have today, and what would we say this is like? It's like the Supreme Court. Their job is to make sure that things are fair, especially when it comes to laws and otherwise things that are created. So that's really, in essence, part 2, 3. Is you have the tripartite government, and you have your patricians versus your plebeians, or your rich versus your middle class. I don't want to say poor, because most of us probably would be plebeians today. Section 2.4. Let me turn the page, my notes. 2.4. I wanted to be able to compare Rome's dictator to modern times. All right. Some of the things you could talk about is temporary versus permanent. Temporary. So in terms of Rome, they only use them at certain time periods. They use them when they needed people to have control over a whole thing, everything basically, if they were being attacked per se. And permanent means it's lasting. So that's a little bit different. So if we're doing an analysis of it, we're saying Cincinnatus versus like Hitler. So one is serving the people themselves well, the other one probably not so much. Next thing, I'm trying to keep this in good shape here. There we go. Next thing is that story of Cincinnatus. So we'll put him in again. The idea of civic duty. Civic duty, meaning that he served his country, he served his community without really being offered much in return. And then when he was done, he went back to what he was doing. And then the example of modern times be George Washington. In fact, the 8th graders are talking about that today. How George Washington went out of retirement several times to not only serve in the American Revolution, but to also help when he became president of the United States. Next on this section, the importance of the 12 tables. All right, this thing did not work for me here. The importance of the 12 tables. So the 12 tables, if you don't remember, the 12 tables were laws that were written down. And they were put where people could see them. The importance is that people now know where these things are. An example of it in modern times, it's just like the U.S. Constitution. So we know where these laws are now. We may not have to go look them up or necessarily use them, but they're there for a benefit if that's the case. And then, excuse me. And then lastly is the idea. Under this, there's a lot in the section. is rule of law. Rule of law equals laws are for everyone, not just the rich, not just celebrities. Laws are for everyone. All should be treated equally. Now, that's a pie in the sky idea, but that's the ideas of laws, that they should treat everybody equally. Number 2-5, rolling right along. 2-5. Be able to tell me the story of Carthage. Woo. Story of Carthage. So that would include the Punic Wars. You had wars where these two groups hated each other. So I'll put hated Rome. So they had these series of affairs. They fought over Sicily, basically for power in the Mediterranean. And then be able to tell me about Hannibal. That's 2 N's here, Mr. Steyer. Hannibal. He fought Rome, but I also want you to tell me about what tactics he used. You could say elephants. He crossed the Alps. Attacking Rome head on. You know, anything from the videos that you were supposed to have watched, any of those things. And then the last thing I want you to be able to tell me in this section is the end results. The end results are Rome rules all. So in other words, you have all of Rome now is essentially Rome because nobody else is there to really challenge them. Section 2-6, almost done. You're staying with me. So 2-6, 2-7, 2-8, now roll with these emperors. 2-6 is a story of the first triumvirate. Triumvirate, that works. Or we'll say triumvirate. First triumvirate, that was Caesar, Pompey, Crassus. Now, Crassus loses. Pompey, or Crassus kind of gets killed or leaves one of them. And that doesn't want to work for me there. Stop it. There we go. Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. So the idea is that Caesar is by himself, and he ends up winning. So he ends up being really ruler of Rome. So he comes in, and he makes reforms. Boy, my typing's getting worse. I'm trying to get this done here between periods. He makes reforms. Reforms. That doesn't work at all. He makes reforms, which are changes. So remember that Caesar was really well liked by the people. So I want you to be able to tell me some things that he did to help the people out. So he created work, started new colonies, granted citizenship. So why is that important? Because it was also led to his downfall. And so the very last thing that I want you to be able to talk about is the downfall of Caesar. So we'll put that down. So the downfall of Caesar, if you don't remember, his friends in Senate thought he would be king. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that he was going to be king, but they thought that he was, so they stabbed him in the back. And thus ended Julius Caesar. So that first triumvirate obviously does not work very well. So you would think that Rome would say, hey, we're not going to do this anymore. But Rome, well, sorry, not their finest moments because they ended up having the second triumvirate. So what I do want you to do on this one is compare the first triumvirate with the second one. So like, tell me how they went. Poorly. Didn't end too well for either side of them. And tell me who won. It was either Caesar or it was Augustus. Yeah, so that's it. Be able to compare the first and the second one. And then lastly is to be able to tell me how Octavian used wise words. In this case, I got two examples. He went from Octavian to Augustus. So he is now the wise and benevolent guy, or else how you want to call it, the revered one. And then the second thing is he's not a dictator. But instead, an imperator, which basically means emperor. And we said that he did that because he didn't want to fall to the same fate as his uncle Julius Caesar. So he changes the words up a little bit, and then, you know, people aren't so mad at him. And in your very last section, hopefully I get this before the bell rings. Maybe not. I'll have to pause it here for a second. Boy, that's not working out here. 2:8, very last section. You have three things. Rule of Augustus. So I want you to tell me some of his reforms that he made. And so that would be, he built up the army. Pax Romana, time of 200-year peace. Improved buildings and laws. Made a secret service, which is his Praetorian Guard. So he learned, obviously, that he didn't want anybody stabbing him in the back. So first thing is the rule of Augustus. Second thing is I want you to be able to compare getting there. Not working. Compare Caesar and Augustus, just so you know which guy was which thing. All right, so you have an idea. And the very last thing, we're all said and done with this review, is know your last four M for emperors. That's a tough word to spell. So your last four guys, you have Caligula and Nero, who you can group in as the weirdos, the guys who did bad things, but they also did a couple of decent things. And then you have Tiberius and Claudius. So the us's are good. The us's are for us. The Caligula, Nero, not so much. So there you go. If you're looking at your note sets, these are all the main things that I want you to know. Besides these and your vocabulary, if you know all of these, you are in good shape for your test. So use this wisely. I think I'll probably keep this in a document as well. And then you can just look over it yourself if you don't want to hear me jibber jabber the whole time. But there you go. Hope this helps. I will see you later.